Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. This time we are going to be going over my 5 favorite games for the Sega Genesis so far. So let's get the selection criteria out of the way really quick. These are games that I have to have played for this channel. So over the last 4 years or so, I've talked about a few Sega Genesis games. I picked out the 5 that I have enjoyed the most or have the most memories of playing. And you can find all of these on the channel at the moment. So let's start off with a shooter. This one is Biohazard Battle. It's kind of a weird one, and it's one that I've got a lot of memories of playing from, really the late 90s when I started collecting video games. You play as some sort of mutant space fish, and you are fighting other space fish. It feels a little bit like a Darius game, but it's not as good as Darius, even though it is a very fun shooter. I remember buying this game just mostly for the way the box art looked. Anyway, let's move on to the next one, and this is Alien Storm. I absolutely love a good beat 'em up. And I've played a few of them so far, but this one really kind of stood out for me. Mostly because a bunch of the other ones I've played have been on the Super Nintendo. Now, Alien Storm uses the Golden Axe engine, so there's a lot of similarities between those two games. But it also has this first-person shooter section, which is pretty awesome in its own right. The rest of the game is kind of your standard beat 'em up. You've got 3 characters that you can choose from, and yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's not my favorite overall, but it's definitely one of the better ones that I've played for this channel so far. I also like the variety in it. Each character kind of feels a little bit different, even though they're gonna play the same, they're still gonna feel a little bit different just because it's a girl, a guy, and a robot. So let's move on to the Punisher. This one is awesome. This is a great version of this game. This is obviously based on the Marvel comic books, and this is an incredibly faithful port of the arcade game. I don't know why this one looks so great, but it's a really fun game. I do have some problems with it. It's not my favorite Marvel beat 'em up. That would be the Spider-Man beat 'em up, but this one is really cool. It gets a little weird because I don't know why they went with the Punisher and Nick Fury, because it's weird. I've gotten more into that when I did a review of it. But this one is really one of the better beat 'em ups on the Sega Genesis. At least the ones that are not like Golden Axe and Streets of Rage. If you're looking for something that kind of, is kind of a little bit different from those games, the Punisher is definitely something that you should try. I actually didn't know this was an arcade game at first until I got the arcade 1-up cabinet for Marvel, and that one's got like a bunch of them on there, and this one is pretty great. This is a Capcom game, but I think it got redesigned by Sega or something along those lines. And of course, EA is going to make an appearance on this list. You remember when EA used to make good games? They used to publish stuff that was kind of unique and different. Well, you might not if you weren't really playing games in the 90s. But yeah, EA used to make a bunch of really awesome games. They used to publish a lot of really great stuff, and The Haunting starring Poltergeist is one of those games that's just totally different from anything else on the system. It's amazing. I don't think there's really a comparison, like an actual comparison with the Super Nintendo. It's just one of those super unique games that Sega was able to get and that EA actually took a chance on. And you can't really say that about EA now. They just don't really take chances on these games. It's another game that I discovered kind of a lot later on when I was collecting games in like the last 5 or 6 years, and I'm really glad that I was able to get a hold of it. This game is just great. You play as a poltergeist. Oh my gosh, wow. Yeah, you play as a poltergeist, and you are going around trying to scare the shit out of this family and get them out of like a series of different houses. It's awesome. I love this game so much. Now we move on to Phantasy Star 4. This is my favorite game in the series. This is my favorite Sega Genesis game. It's the game that I have the most memories playing when I was younger, especially on the Sega Genesis. This was a game that my friends rented once. We had no idea what was going on, but a friend of ours rented it. I think it was after we had played the first Final Fantasy. And he rented this game, told me, well, it's kind of like Final Fantasy, but it's really different. It's got a lot of different stuff going on in it. And we went over to his house, we started playing it, and it felt like we were just there all day going through this thing. And, you know, it was a lot of me kind of explaining, okay, this is what we need to do in an RPG, this is what we need to do in order to move on to this spot. We need to kind of grind for levels in order to be able to get past this thing. It was just a lot of fun playing this game. Sadly, this is where the Phantasy Star series at least ended for me. It would go on and kind of turn into an MMO and do some other stuff, but this is really like the peak of the franchise for me. The enemies were all really unique and really cool looking. The backgrounds were great. The characters were awesome. The game is just really, really good. If you haven't had a chance to play this one, definitely try this out. This is an RPG that I would honestly hold up there with like Final Fantasy VI. And it's right up there with Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger, and Earthbound. It's not better than any of those. And you might think, you know, okay, well, it's not as good as those. In my opinion, it is. Like, this is the best RPG on the Sega Genesis, in my opinion. Granted, it doesn't have, the Genesis doesn't have a deep field of RPGs, but this is definitely the best one. At least, you know, the best one that I've played so far, the best one that I know of. It's just so awesome. I love this game so much. And, you know, I wanted to kind of play through the series in order for this channel, and I did that, and yeah, this one is just absolutely amazing. So now that I'm done fanboying out about Phantasy Star 4, which is really the whole reason I did this, because I wanted a second bite at, you know, fanboying out about Phantasy Star 4, let's get into some of my final thoughts on this. I haven't played a lot of Sega Genesis games for this channel so far, but the ones that I've played are usually those that I remember the most, or the ones that I have, you know, the most experience with, or they were done with kind of a purpose. I wanted to play through a certain series, or I wanted to go and revisit something that I hadn't seen before, I wanted to revisit something I hadn't played in a while, or I wanted to play all the launch titles, or kind of like the next run of titles that they released. So after launch titles, the next group. These 5 have been the ones that I had the most fun with. They're the ones that I think are probably the best of those that I've played so far, which again, not a huge library, but these are definitely the ones that I think are worth really like revisiting time and time again. Anyway, guys, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and have a great day, everybody. Bye.